So welcome everyone. I'm Alexandra and I'm an analytics developer. As Liz mentioned, this is a remastered workshop. We did one in January, I think it was 2024, but you all know that since then a lot have changed. And we decided to bring some new updates, some bugs maybe of GA4, or everything that we learned during the last year. So let me start with an intro before we start on the content. I usually put this slide here because I forget to mention, so it is a safe option for me. First of all, after the workshop presentation, I will dedicate some time to answer your question. We will have a Q&A section, so feel free to ask anything that you want in this meeting's chat. And I will take the time to review the questions and answer them in this call. Secondly, by the end of this workshop also, and when we send you the material, we will share also a feedback form. It will be very valuable to us if you take like 2 minutes. I don't think it will take longer than that, because first of all, you will let us know how we can improve, and feedback is always valuable. And secondly, you can share with us ideas about workshops you would like to see from us in the next days. So feel free to share your ideas and we will value your feedback very, very much. And last but not least, as Liz mentioned, we kept busy and we have a lot of workshops. Apart from the original GA4 workshop last year, we have several others, more than 10, I think, regarding Google Ads and Google Analytics topics. Feel free to browse in our website and find other workshops that might be suitable for your business. And having said that, the admin part, let's start with our topics. So, again, mentioned 1 year before, we did the GA4 workshop. I wanted to share here for everyone the content, so you will, if you see something interesting, you can go back and see these topics. We talked about irrelevant or spam traffic and wanted incorrect referrals or redirects, unassigned and not set traffic, which we cover also today a lot. And PII data that usually make an appearance in your GA4 reports. Feel free to go and see this as well. It was an incredible workshop from my colleague Arthur. And let's move on in today's agenda. Before I reveal the agenda, I think you already know what we will cover today, but I wanted to share the history behind that. When we started creating the content of this presentation, I usually start with an outline. So I went through all of our audit elements that we usually go through for the checks, for our checks. And it was a list for more than 90 checks that we usually do. And of course, when you do an audit, one thing leads to another, and usually more elements end up in this list. But yes, of course, I couldn't do like 90 checks here today in this 1 hour session, sorry. So then I went to my email and I checked what are the most common questions that I receive from our clients. What are the most common pitfalls that we saw our clients fall in during the past year, and this brought this agenda to life. First of all, I would like to have an intro of why it is important and why we are doing again this workshop, to check your setup regularly. Secondly, we will discuss a little bit about the Google Stack checking tools that appeared in the last year. And then we will go into your channels reports, unassigned and not set traffic, over-attribution issues that appeared during the last year. And then we will spot some red flags, which I think it's very important for everyone to know. And just be suspicious when you analyze your data, because there are some small indicators in your reports that might reveal some important wrongdoings. And it is very important to spot them earlier than later. And as I mentioned earlier, we will dedicate some time for your questions. So feel free to drop your question in the chat, and I will go through it after the presentation. And of course, our protagonist here, our Looker Studio report that we built for you. It is consisted by our today's agenda elements, and you can use it for yourself in order to self-audit your account while we are talking in this presentation. So Arthur will share in the chat the link for this report, in which I think you all have access. If there are any issues, please let me know. And of course, about a few words about this Looker Studio, but maybe it will be best to share a real quick overview. Sorry. First of all, the data you see here for my example is from Google's demo account. But when you get this report, when you open it, you can select your own account by this drop-down. This drop-down is private to you. If you see all your accounts here, this does not mean that someone else that opened the account has access to them. It is linked with your email. So if you open this report with the email that you have access to your clients or your own Google Analytics accounts, then the Google Analytics should be present in this list. You can change the date range by this filter here. It is preset to last month's data, but you can make it broader or shorter. It is recommended to check, at least for our checks right now, a shorter period, so you will not have any sampling issues, but it is for you to decide. This report also, it consists from 2 pages. We have the first page, which is corresponding to the first section of our presentation, and then we have some indicators about basic metrics, which is the second one from our workshop. I will go into the details in between of our presentation, so you can follow me through and understand the data that you see in this report. But for now, I will go back to our presentation. Also, one last thing about this is for the slides that we have content in the Looker Studio template, you will find this icon and of course, the area that is corresponding to this slide in Looker Studio. Okay, enough chit-chat. Let's start by discussing why checking your setup is regularly important and why we are repeating this, let's say, workshop, because a lot happened since last time, at least last time we spoke about it. And by that, we mean we had several Google updates, either consent mode, that it was mandatory to implement on March 2024, or platform updates and requirements. GA4 is constantly changing, bringing up new things, taking back others. So it is very important to stay updated and make sure that they don't break your setup. But apart from Google's part, of course, we have also website changes. And it is very important for you to understand that even the smallest change, the slightest little box in a form, might break your setup. So maybe you will be like, sure, okay, I made a small change in the website. This shouldn't be an issue for GA4, but apparently it is the most probable scenario is that it is. And what I like to say usually is that GA4 is a living organism, so you should maintain it and should feed them with updates to make sure accurate measurement. So if you don't do a full checkup once per year, like 2 days audit, at least make sure that you have some basic checks in your list that you will monitor in a regular basis to make sure that you have accurate information in your reports. And with that, we are going to a new last year's update of Google's tools. I believe that a lot of you might have noticed this tag quality checking tool that appeared in all Google platforms like Google Ads, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager. I told you earlier that I went into my emails and there were several of them asking why my tag quality warning here is like needs attention. What's wrong with our setup? What did we do wrong, etc., etc. The case here is that in all of my clients' accounts that I have right now, I think it's only one that has an excellent status. And this does not mean that they don't have a great setup. This means that this checking tool is not always revealing the truth. And even Google itself, they have a whole section in their documentation about false positives. And it is very important for you to understand that needs attention there does not mean that your setup has issues. But don't get me wrong, this does not mean also that everything is working correctly. But I wanted to share here just to avoid any confusion or to ease a little bit your mind when this is a false positive, and if this is not happening, then you might be worried. First of all, we have low traffic pages. When this checking tool appeared in our account, it includes all of our pages or all of the page URLs that appear in your website. Some of the pages, like the home page, might be regularly visited, but some other pages, like, for example, a blog post or a thank you page, might not be loaded enough. So if a page has a long time to load, so Google tag does not load there as well, this might be flagging a false positive that the page is actually untagged. The same scenario comes with redirects. If we have redirect serve in our website, then both URLs will appear into our list, but apparently some of them might be mistakenly flagged as untagged. Again, with pages with or without trailing slashes and duplicate instances, and even capitalization might appear in a separate row, but must be flagged wrongly untagged. So it is very important to keep this in mind. Actually, I will not show it today, but it is quite easy to check it. And if you follow the links from this tag quality checking tool, you can go to the page, to the specific page, and see for yourself if the Google tag is available there or not. And having said that, let's move on to our first topic. And our first topic, it's mainly about traffic acquisition reports. In Universal Analytics, life was a little bit easier, but in GA4, we have a lot of questions. And again, back to my emailing list, 80% of my emails, I like, what is this not set information in my traffic acquisition report? Why everything is going under unassigned traffic? And today I would like to bring some clarity. Of course, there are several things that you can check and might be causing this not set traffic, but today I will cover most common mistakes and easy checks that you can do for yourself. But before that, I will just want to bring some theory before we begin discussing about UTMs and referrals and everything. And the theory here is that how GA4 identifies channels, how attributes to a specific channel, a conversion or a session. So we have a priority in GA4. First of all, it looks for auto-tagging parameters. For example, GCLID, who stands for Google Ads Click ID. So if the landing page includes this GCLID value and the user, of course, accepts cookies, then GA4 will use this parameter to attribute the visit to the correct channel. If GCLID, if auto-tagging parameters are not there, then it goes and searches for UTM parameters. UTM parameters are manually there. We put them there. We need to follow some rules. We will discuss this later on, but it is second in priority. If none of these are present in the landing page URL, then it goes for the referrer. And this means the website that brought the session into our own site. So if, for example, someone goes into our website from Google search, then the referrer would be there google.com, but because we will not have auto-tagging or UTM parameters, the traffic will go to organic. Otherwise, if we have an affiliate website and we don't tag properly the link that leads to our website, then again, we will see this affiliate website as referral in our reports. Everything else, if we don't have these three options, will be attributed under direct, usually. But I want to note here that for GA4 to identify this kind of parameters and information, it is very important to have session data like session ID, landing page, and user identifiers like client ID. I will discuss more on this later, but keep this in mind. Let's go now to our unassigned and not set traffic, not set values. I assume that everyone here today at some point went into the website and spotted this unassigned traffic and saw it like in the top 5 rows, if it's not in the first row. And of course, the question is why, and what is this unassigned traffic? There are a lot of answers about it. I will try to do it from the easy one to the most complicated one, as I mentioned. I will mention here the easy detectable causes for that, but of course, there might be more complicated issues with your setup. If none of them that I will mention today are not present in your setup, then you should start searching other routes. By the way, I will start, as you saw here, there is our icon that we will link information to the Looker Studio. And starting here in our first area, you will see that we have how many sessions are unassigned and not set for your account. So if you by now clicked and selected your GA4 by this drop-down, then the data should be updated in this report. And let's start by these scorecards. These scorecards are the percent of total for your sessions and events that are attributed under the unassigned channel. We want this to be under 1%. If the percentage exceeds 1%, then something might be wrong with your setup. And don't be alarmed, just pace with me. We will see there might be some easy fixes for your setup or not. But let's start with the first element, custom campaigns and UTM issues. This is the easy one. And what I mean by that is that when you use custom UTM tagging, you need to define yourself manually the elements, source, medium, campaign, term, whatever else you want. There are a lot of UTM parameters available, but it is very important to always have source, medium, and campaign. It is very, very important to keep all of these three in your setup. If you don't, and this is an example that we have here, you will see a not set parameter, a not set placeholder, let's say. So In this example, for example, in this first row, you see a source defined, but the medium was not. In this case, we will have all this traffic from this channel under unassigned channel. Let me take a step back, and I will just want to mention, I'm sure everyone is familiar, but channel groups is just a set of rules that Google predefined in order to group in bigger groups the source medium information. So you, if you don't have something defined here, then Google is unable to assign it to a proper channel, so it goes under unassigned. Again, second reason, internal links. I've seen this so many times in the audits that we've done in the past year. For some reason, a lot of businesses track internal content like banners or links with custom UTMs. This is not a best practice. Usually this kind of UTMs goes like banner as a medium or link or website or whatever. But of course, first, these UTM definitions are not recognizable by GA4. And secondly, this kind of setup overrides original channel or original source. So you don't want to do that. This kind of setup will go under unassigned. And third, but last but not least, we have the UTMs not following the rules. As I already mentioned, GA4 has specific predefined rules in order to classify sources under bigger groups called channels. Let's take, for example, paid search. As you can see here, this is a part of the documentation. We have sources for paid search that match a list of search sites like Bing or Google, for example, and medium have something like CP something, CPC, CPM, CPA, or PPC, or retargeting, or something with paid. In this case, when source medium that looks like that comes into our website and recognized by GA4, then this information will go under paid search. But in case we don't follow the rules, for example, we use source like Google and medium like AdWords, then this traffic will go under unassigned. It will not go under paid search. So it is a very common mistake that people do, and they don't see traffic in the paid search, but they see a very huge amount of sessions in the unassigned traffic. So about this, you can go into our Looker Studio report right now and see for yourselves here in this table if the unassigned traffic that you have in your own website right now includes cases with unrecognizable source medium definitions. In this case, this is the good scenario that it is because it is very easily fixable. And what I mean by that, first of all, you need to use consistent UTM tagging, or if you don't want to change it, you can create a custom channel group in GA4 and apply your own rules and create your own channels. Let's move on to the other easy part, which is the data freshness. Here you don't have something to do. Here is about GA4 and its limitations, and apparently we have a 48-hour window where the data might not be properly assigned to other traffic channels. And by that, by saying that, let's see this example. Here I have a report where I have filtered unassigned traffic and I checked it at 8 a.m. You can see a peak in traffic in the unassigned value, in the unassigned channel for the day before, like 1.2 almost K for just one day. And we have in total 6.3 K sessions assigned to this unassigned channel. After checking again the same account for the same dates at 5 p.m. this time, you can see a significant drop without any action on my side, I promise, that unassigned traffic dropped to almost 200 sessions. So, and of course, almost 1K was missing at 5 p.m. from this unassigned channel because it was attributed to the correct traffic. So keep that in mind, that either don't select the previous day for your analysis, or you have to wait, and don't be alarmed at all. Just wait a few hours for GA4 to do its job and attribute the traffic to the correct channels. Audience triggers issues. This is a very, let's say, useful feature of GA4, where it allows you to create an event when a user joins to an audience. For example, here we have an audience created where we track people who see more than 4 page views in our website. So this means that they see 5+ pages in our website. When a user joins into this audience, we have set up an audience trigger, and an event is sent to our GA4 for this new addition to our audience. This is a very useful functionality if you want to track segments, which is not yet available in GA4, but we had, of course, in Universal Analytics. But the main drawback here is that usually, not always, audience triggers do not follow attribution logic. So most of these events could be attributed under the not set source in your reports. So if you would like to track this kind of behaviors and evaluate them based on channels, you should create the setup from GTM or any other way, because audience triggers are not the solution for you. Now, we have session start. Session start event, we will also mention the couple of times in the following slides. But session start event, first visit, user engagement are all built-in events that are automatically populated by just putting a Google tag into our website. We have no impact on them, we cannot modify them, and unfortunately, until now, we don't have reports, detailed reports about this kind of actions. So it is kind of difficult to identify the issues with them. I mentioned in the start of this section that in order to identify channels, it is very important to have session data. Session data are session ID and landing pages and all the information that comes with them. But this information ends up in our reports with two important events. It's the session start event and the first page view. If we lose either one of those, then we will not have channel information available. And it will go under the not set source medium. Unfortunately, this is not very fixable. There are some limitations in JavaScript and browsers that might be happening. But if you see a lot of not set traffic values and none of the other elements apply, maybe you have some issues with your setup and your website and restricts this kind of information from reaching your GA4 reports. Again, in GA4, I mentioned there is no way to actually identify, easy way at least, identify session start behavior. But what we did in our Looker Studio report is that we created this landing pages report. What we have here is that we check the % of total of not set landing pages. Again, if you don't have the landing page information properly defined in your setup, then you will not have landing page information in general. So if session start event is missing and or first page view event is missing, then you will have an increased not set landing pages in your setup. You should check it. I would say like 10%. It's really high, but 10% might be a good indicator for your setup. But more than 10%, it is an issue for you. By the way, it is very surprising always that the demo account of Google always has the worst setup. But let's move on. And this is about session start event. Let's discuss about Google Tag. I mentioned it a lot of times until now, but Google Tag is actually the global configuration of GA4. It's the basic code that needs to be enabled in order for GA4 to track data. Actually, it will track data and without the Google Tag if you do it through GTM, but the data will be a whole mess. So first of all, the first move we do when we want to implement GA4 is to implement the Google Tag. But if this setup is not done correctly, we might fall into the not set trap again. So what we want for our GA4 basic setup is to fire Google Tag as first priority. And in order to control this, it is usually recommended to separate page view tracking with your Google Tag tracking in GTM. Because if you do them together, which is an option, the default option actually, this might lead to not be able to control which fires first. We need Google Tag first. Ideally, we want a separate tag with the page view immediately after the Google Tag. And then every other event can follow and everything will be working fine. If we don't have this setup, it means that we will have increased not set values in our traffic acquisition reports. One way to configure this is by setting up tag sequencing in GA4, in GTM, I'm sorry. If you see any issues with the tags loading and the order. If you can't control it otherwise, then tag sequencing might be the answer here to make sure that everything is tracked in the proper order. And user-provided data. Okay, this is a new feature from GA4, was introduced and pushed a lot the last year, but of course it comes with problems. But let me start discussing about reporting identity. I assume you already know, but reporting identity is how GA4 identifies the user. If it's a new user, if it's a returning user, etc., etc. So in order to identify the user, it leverages some identifiers, of course. Also here we have a priority. So GA4 starts with a user ID, which is usually a unique identifier for logged in users. And if it doesn't find it, it goes to the following signals. Usually we don't have in the general navigation user ID, so GA4 introduced user-provided data as a second priority identifier. User-provided data might be familiar from the enhanced conversion setup. It concerns email, data, phone, address, actually personal information of our customers that they use to log in into their Google account and navigate from Chrome to our websites and to the internet. So what we see here is that if user ID is not available, then second in priority is user-provided data for GA4 to identify the user. This might be coming with benefit regarding cross-device tracking, but apparently it creates a big amount of traffic in the not set. Then we have, of course, device ID, which is the regular model that we have available. We had it in the Universal Analytics also, the browser ID identifier. And then we have modeling from consent mode. Regarding user-provided data, you can enable it quite easy from your admin section and data collection settings by clicking on the turn on option button here. But this is a beta version, and to be honest, I wouldn't trust it. I never recommend to use a beta version unless you want Google to test features in your own data. It is shown that user-provided data might cause a lot of not set traffic in your reports. So if you have enabled it, I would suggest to turn it off. Otherwise, just keep it there like disabled. And when the time comes, maybe we will move on to this identifier as well. But for now, let's keep it, I would suggest. Of course, it would be a great 2024 presentation if consent mode was not there. And it is there for all of our sections, of course, because it causes a lot of problems. But as I mentioned, during March in 2024, a consent mode was enforced by Google if we wanted to use their platforms. And of course, this comes with some issues if you don't implementing it right. Don't get me wrong, if you do everything right, then your data are safe. But there are some traps that you might fall into, and this is why I'm here to communicate everything with you. One step back, what is consent mode? Really quick, just for someone that may not be very familiar, we have a user that visits our website, then they ask for a consent. If the user provide consent, then everything is tracked as usual. Life is breezy. We don't have something to do here. But when the user does not provide consent, then Google measures behavior based on other signals without cookies and identifiers for the user. And data from consented users and signals and modeling from unconsented users are sent into the Google Analytics reports. But if we don't send the right signals, then GA4 will be assigning this traffic in the not set source medium. One very common mistake that I can address here for sure, that you can test it here, is the default command. In order to implement consent mode, you need to send two signals. The default command, which means the initial consent state of the user, and then the update command, which communicates to Google the choices of the user in the consent banner. I've seen a lot in our audits that we've done during the past year that this default state, for some reason, is skipped. So if we skip this default command, which is usually implemented in the source code, sometimes through GTM, but it is best to implement it in the source code. If this step was skipped, then we will have an increased not set volume. So make sure you have the correct consent mode set up with both stages, so you will decrease the not set traffic from your setup. And it wouldn't be a B2B specific workshop if we don't talk about measurement protocol. Measurement protocol is a method that we can send offline information. So we can set the stages of customers from the customer funnel that are happening usually offline. So we have a dedicated workshop for it. You can go and search it, and we speak with a lot more details. But I want to communicate here the pitfalls of measurement protocol. And I will start by this. Don't be scared. I will not speak technical. This is just the documentation of Google. that tells you how to set up measurement protocol. As I mentioned, this methodology communicates, sends data from CRM to GA4. This data should include some information, of course. Well, as you can see from these guidelines, the required parameters for measurement protocol to work, like to send from CRM, are the client ID, the identifier from the user, and information about events. Nothing else, everything else is optional. Measurement protocol will work only with these three parameters. But I mentioned in the beginning, session information are important. So even though it is not required, session ID should be present in the setup of measurement protocol if you would like to stitch session information from the online to the offline world. If you don't put it there, you will have all the offline events attributed to under not set source medium with no exception. So I assume you don't want that. But of course, session ID is not a solution that resolves everything, because GA4 has limitations. And the limitation is the 72-hour window. If you are using measurement protocol, for sure you have heard by now the 72-hour window, but I would like to describe it with an example to make sure that we are aligned what we are talking here. Let's take an example from a user that lands into our website from Google CPC campaign in the 1st of February. This user goes into our sign-up form and submits the form successfully for the same day, and then the process goes in the offline world. Well, in order to move the user from one stage, from the form submission to the MQL stage, let's say that 2 days have passed, like 48 hours from the online session to the MQL stage. So this is less than 72 hours limit that we are discussing here. In this case scenario, GA4 will be able to attribute the right channel to the offline conversion. But the question is, what is happening when the window between the two events is longer, like 4 days and 96 hours for sure, more than 72 hours. In this case, again, with no exception, the conversion will be attributed under the not set channel. The question here is, okay, so what happens if we have a longer user cycle in the offline world? Are we doomed? The answer is yes, if you're using only a GA4. But there are options, a bit more technical options, like BigQuery, where if you link it with your GA4, you can have raw data available for your GA4 traffic, both online and offline conversions. And you can build there your own reports and your own attribution models. So you will not be dependent on GA4 and its limitations, but you can use your own reporting and coding skills to have the full truth in your reports. Last, on the measurement protocol conversation is the multiple GA4 codes. So again, I'm repeating myself. In order to set up measurement protocol requests, we will have to have the client ID in the payload and the session ID. Both values are retrieved from cookies. The client ID is retrieved from the GA cookie, and the session ID is retrieved from this _GA underscore part of your measurement ID letters. From this cookie specifically, we get the first string of the first numbers, where they are the session ID and they indicate the timestamp of the session. So if we have this kind of information and we don't exceed limits, of course, we will be able to stitch data from the online and offline world. But what happens when we have multiple GA4s in our website? In this case, each GA4 measurement ID will create its own cookie. So the codes you are going to place in your setup to retrieve the session ID data should be very specific for the measurement ID that you want to retrieve the information. For example, if we want to take this last value as session ID, because this is what we track, this is what our measurement ID is, and this is the report that I want to enhance with offline information, but by mistake, I use the session ID that it is in this cookie, then GA4 will not be able to identify the session in their traffic information. And this means that wrong session ID means not set info for GA4. So all of your measurement ID, measurement protocol requests and events will go under the not set info. Okay, this is only about unassigned and not set traffic, but unfortunately, channels pitfalls do not stop there. During the last year, we were introduced in this over-attribution concept. Usually it concerns direct and organic, and I would like to share with you what we found during this last year. GA4 had a lot of attribution changes in their reports for the last year. Usually, we identified, I mentioned this earlier, I think, we identified direct as people that bookmarked our website or they typed our website directly in the browser. But apparently in GA4, direct means that GA4 fails to identify the origin of the session, of the traffic. So there are some reasons behind that. I gathered here the most common again, the ones that you can actually identify on your own. So let's start with website redirects. And here we have a GIF here, which Arthur helped me to create. Thank you so much. Where we have the redirects and the stripping parameters. First of all, there are cases that when people land into your website, a redirect immediately happens. There are cases that when this redirect happens, the auto-tagging parameters or the UTM parameters are completely stripped off the URL. And when the information sent to your GA4, we have no information at all about traffic acquisition, and the traffic will go under your direct channel. So what you can do here is you can go into your website and start experimenting, like putting HTTP or HTTPS in your website and use some custom UTM parameters and see how it interacts. Use www or no www and see how this will affect your query parameters. If they are stripped off, communicate with your developers to resolve this issue, because this will cause the direct over-attribution. And with that, we are moving on to the cookie banner. First of all, of course, I will share our experience, but you don't make any changes if you don't advise your legal department. But what we've seen so far is that websites that actually know users that can ignore the banner, they will do so. So in this example, we have a website where the banner is completely in the bottom and it can be easily ignored by users. And if someone moves to the second or third page of the navigation and then decide to accept the cookies, this means that GA4 will not have landing page information, and it will attribute the traffic to the direct. So this is the case, and what you can do here is to use an enforced banner. So what this means is that, of course, we don't say to track people without consent, but what you can do is actually force people to interact with the banner, either accept or rejecting. Of course, it's their own choice, but they will not be able to move to another page if they don't provide consent, not consent, provide an option, whatever it is. So what this tactic, along with the proper GA4 setup, and by that I mean trigger immediately GA4 after the decision, will resolve this direct over-attribution from your consent banner. It is very important to do so to avoid, actually to gain back your traffic, because otherwise people will ignore it. Advanced consent mode, again, consent mode. I promised it will be present in all of our sections. I think it was around early July where we spotted this organic over-attribution case. And by that, I mean that consent mode has, I shared the screenshot earlier, has several stages where we have consent or not. One of these parameters is called add user data. And also we have settings in browser where people can accept Google Ads personalization or not. In case of that these values are set to denied, then we observed that we have an over-attribution in organic campaign in GA4 when we analyzed Google CPC data. So here in this screenshot, you see an example of UTM of campaigns, session campaigns, from Google CPC, which is highlighted the organic value. You can see that most of the traffic from July 1st onwards is attributed to this organic value. Well, there is a solution for that. It needs some time, of course, and dedication from you, but what you can do is use custom UTM parameters on top to your auto tagging settings in your Google Ads interface. So what you have to do is to go into the URL settings for each campaign specifically and set up custom UTMs. UTM source, medium, campaign, at least all of these three. If you do so, you will see a drop in this organic campaign value, and then again, your campaigns will start bringing back the information to the proper campaign names. Two things that you have to keep in mind, though. First of all, you need to keep it consistent. So every new campaign should have UTMs defined in their settings. And secondly, you have to be careful with how you encode campaign name, because it will be present in a URL, so it needs to have the proper encode version. Otherwise, you will split rows in GA4 for the same campaign with different naming. And with that, I want to move to our Google, to our Looker Studio report. In the section D from the first page, you will see that we have separated Google CPC traffic, and we report campaign data. So if you see this increase for your organic information, this means that you need to define UTM tagging in your Google Ads campaigns. A bit, one comment here, because recently I followed some Google's announcements, and they are planning to introduce a new identifier that will resolve this kind of issue automatically. But to be honest, for now, I wouldn't trust it. It will be an alpha version. So in order to lose more data, please use custom UTMs to make sure that all of your traffic is properly attributed to the right campaigns. Then we have browser restrictions. In this case, to be honest, I don't have a solution. This is something that is happening behind the scenes. Privacy regulations became really popular every year, actually, since 2018, where GDPR was introduced. A lot of browsers apply internal filtering. They restrict auto-tagging parameters and limit information from GA4. In this case, we have direct over-attribution. Again, from what we know, GA4 will, in the future, will separate this kind of restrictions from direct in a placeholder called data not available. Maybe you found it around the blogs, and it is supposed to cover this kind of missing information. And bot traffic. Of course, direct over-attribution cannot go without bot traffic. Again, GA4 does not provide, unfortunately, the capability of filtering out common bot sources, as we could do in the past with universal analytics, but you can spot them and maybe you can remove them manually when you are evaluating your traffic. One way to do so is to set up custom alerts where you identify peaks in your direct traffic, like the ones in the example that I have here. And when you identify this kind of peaks, you will be able to create custom reporting, maybe with BigQuery or Looker Studio, and remove this kind of peaks, so you will have an approximate image of your traffic. And before I move on to the second section, I wanted to share this last one for last area in our Looker Studio report, which concerns the first part and the channels attribution, and it concerns direct traffic. Well, the rule here is that if we see direct traffic exceed 30% of total sessions, then we have a problem. Demo account, again, has a problem. We have 55% of total traffic. This means that we have either spam traffic or redirects or cookie banner malfunctions, and consent mode is not implemented properly. Take a look. If you spot more than 30%, start searching around your data and identify possible issues. And with that, we will move on to the second part and the reporting red flags. To be honest, I think this is, in my personal opinion, this is the most important thing that you need to keep in mind. You can do your everyday work and keep an eye on your reports and if your data are making sense. So with that, I want you to be just aware and keep an eye on discrepancies that you might see in your everyday data. I have here in my list 4 important checks that you need to do to make sure that your data are accurate in your setup. Let's start with reporting discrepancies. Okay, I will be honest here. This was an issue mainly appearing in GA4 until mid-year of 2024. There was a peak in these cases, but right now it seems to be fewer situations where this might be happening. But when we do everyday concepts and analysis, maybe we fail to spot this kind of discrepancies. And it is very important because if we don't have basic metrics accurate, then everything else in our reports are not there to tell us the truth. So we have the basic metrics, which are sessions, total users, active users, and new users. About the users metrics, they are automatically populated from GA4, and there is nothing we can do about it. Specifically for new users, GA4 accounts these first visit events that again are automatically populated like session start or user engagement events. So if we don't have a proper global configuration, a proper Google tag configuration in our GA4, these discrepancies might happen. And what you can do and actually control through GA4 settings is, first of all, cross-domain configuration. If you have this case in your website, in your business, make sure that you have defined all of the domains that concern the same website experience in your GA4 settings. We have observed that if you don't do a proper cross-domain tracking, then falsely GA4 might send a new first visit event in the separate domain and fail to identify the difference between total users and new users, and these discrepancies might happen. Second one is the automatically collected universal analytics events in GA4 settings. This was a feature that Google actually launched when they forced the transition to GA4. In this case, Google thought it will help to identify universal analytics tags in the code and translate them into GA4 terms. But you can understand that automatic solutions cannot fit all websites, and especially now that we don't have this instance universal analytics anymore, this could create more problems than solve them. So first of all, make sure that this functionality is disabled in your account. And secondly, and most important, check your website if you have forgotten any universal analytics codes there, because they might mess up your reports. And before I move on, I wanted to share the first part of our Looker Studio, where we have the basic metrics here, as I told earlier, sessions, total users, active users, and new users. They should follow this kind of rules. If they don't, we have a problem. So check this with your developer, how you can identify the problem and resolve them, and of course, configure the settings properly. Duplicate pages. This is about your page view, your pages report. We have seen, I think, in almost all of the cases, small details that separate the same page in separate rows. For example, we have a blog post. If we want to evaluate how this blog post performed, and we have a little detail separating the page in our report, this will not be helpful to evaluate the performance of a page. So make sure that you don't have duplicate page views, page URLs, sorry, and how you can easily detect issues at first glance in your reporting is check the unique rows that you have in the page path report. If this number, like 77 in our example, aligns with your separate pages in your website, then you are good to go. If it's not, it might mean that you have some issues and some duplicate instances in your page path report, and you should keep that in mind when you're analyzing data. Or, of course, you can apply URL normalization behind the scenes, or you can transform the page location through GTM for these instances. To identify this kind of duplications, I created this area in Looker Studio report where you can identify the unique URLs that are present in your reports of GA4. And if this number does not align with your website, you can come here in the table next to it and search for pages that have similar patterns and might be duplicates. When you spot them, you can apply either normalization or GTM configuration. Okay, tricky site search. To be honest, this section concerns all enhanced measurement events, but I needed an example to showcase why this enhanced measurement setup does not work. Enhanced measurement is an automated way of GA4 to track important actions, let's say. Google tries to help us, and with a basic Google tag configuration, can actually send some information about scrolls, outbound clicks, site search, form interactions, etc., etc. But of course, there is no one-size-fits-all. All the websites are different, all the needs are different. And for me to prove that to you, I choose the site search functionality. Believe it or not, this is way more common than you can imagine, that we have view search results events in websites that there is no search functionality in them. So why this might be happening? The reason is that we have an automatic site search event sent from GA4 enhanced measurement. How this happens is that GA4 has predefined some query parameters in the setup, which tries to find them in the URL. If they are present, then this view site search results event will be there in your reports, even though you don't have them in your website. For example, you can use a parameter to identify, to separate a variation for your product or a page version or whatever. In this example, we have an S parameter which has a color, maybe a product variation. In this case, even though we don't have a search result, GA4 will recognize this S parameter because it is present here as a site search. And it will send and it will trigger a view search results event in the GA4 reports. So this is the easy example for me to present to you, but you can see that there are a lot of events, especially for some form submission events or file downloads that can be sent wrongfully in your reports. So keep an eye on automated solutions. I know it might be a headache to create everything from scratch, but this is something that can ensure you with accurate measurement in your reports. So turn off enhanced measurement and implement all the necessary events from GTM. Specifically for view search results event, I created an area in Looker Studio where we have filtered this specific event, and we have the page path with query string on the side. So if you see a view search results event and you don't have a site search functionality in your website, this way you can identify which parameter causes actually this event to be triggered. Take a look and make sure that the automated solutions do not play tricks in your reports. And this is the last one, but this is the most common mistake, and this is the most human mistake, but we need to keep an eye on it. And we will start with an event. Let's say we have a website, it has HubSpot forms, and we track demo requests via GTM. In this case scenario, we have this event to be triggered when a HubSpot form is submitted. When we did the audit back then, the first thing we did is to split this event based on page path. What we surprisingly found there is that even though a demo request, demo form had a dedicated page, we had this event triggered in several other pages. And what you can see here is that the client actually reported 263 demo forms submitted, and the real ones were only 48. Why this happened, and why this is human, and this is why every tracking should be monitored after for at least 2 weeks to make sure that data are properly defined. The reason behind that is that we have a generic HubSpot form tracking here. So the client had actually several HubSpot forms in the website for newsletter, for contact form, or anything else, which triggered this event specifically every time a form was submitted. And it was not only demo forms. So it is very important to make sure that the events you are reporting and the events you are evaluating are firing in the right places. For this reason, and this is the last area in our report, we have the final table. In this table, we have the event name, we have the page path that it was triggered, and we have the event counts. Here, there is a filter where you can click and select, let's say, view item, and analyze specific events for your own setup. For example, in this case, view item events should be triggered in product pages. We can see here that we have product pages, so the tracking should be working fine. If for some reason in this view item event we had homepage or contact page, this should alarm us that we have issues with our setup. So yes, just a summary. This was today's content. You can see that it's more than 1 hour that I'm talking, and we just touched these 3 items, let alone have the whole list that I had initially. So 3 topics: unassigned traffic, over-attribution, and red flags in your reports. Make sure that you have all the points checked here for each case to make sure that your data are to trust. But the question is, what is next? First of all, use our Looker Studio template. Check if you can spot issues there. If you can identify them, try to resolve them yourself or communicate with a partner and find assistance. Stay updated with GA4 releases. There are a lot that are coming now. They can change the setup. They can mess up our reports. So it is very important to stay updated and make sure that your data correspond well to these changes. And I know it is complicated, maybe, but it is worth trying, exploring BigQuery. BigQuery is the solution here in most of the cases because you have raw data available and you can play around. They need more technical knowledge, but if you can master BigQuery, then you can resolve like 90% of the issues that I mentioned here today. And with that, I will stop babbling on theory and everything, and I can move on to the chat. Let me just open it to see if you have questions. Great. Will slides be shared? Yes, they will be shared Monday, the latest. They will be in your inbox, both slides and recording of this workshop. We have questions. Liz also answered this. Sorry, I didn't see that. I tried connecting GA4 with Studio Report. It's not working for me. Make sure that you are using the email address that you have access to the Google Analytics account. So the list will be there. If this is not the problem, maybe let me know and we can troubleshoot this for you. Okay, I see Arthur have provided some answers. And see, we have here, interestingly, the challenge we have is the opposite to the over-attribution challenge. Our traffic reported in GA4 has reduced significantly, more than half, since last year. There doesn't seem to be anything particularly driving this, and we're confident our traffic hasn't actually reduced. Leads volumes generated through the site are higher year over year. Our developer and digital manager haven't been able to identify a cause. Is there any update in GA4 that would account for that at all? This is a great question. I can share what Google shares. Usually, over-attribution is a fact. It happens. The other way around, sorry, Liz, can you mute? Thank you. The other way around is not very common. What I can share and what we know for the last couple of years, for the last year actually specifically, Google had made a lot of changes in the attribution models. So this brought the over-attribution issues, but initialized some fixes. Google suggests that these fixes were released, applied, and resolved an issue. I cannot confirm that based on cases of our clients, but maybe this is this might be happening. Now, about organic, I don't think you specify here if it's direct or organic over-attribution. I'm talking to Bromcom computers, yes, but regarding organic over-attribution, I didn't say that a lot during the presentation, but it was mentioned that we are talking about advanced consent mode. Basic consent mode does not have this kind of issues for organic over-attribution. So it is okay not to see the organic over-attribution. It is actually what we want. And if you have basic consent mode, this might be the answer there. Usually, we spot this organic over-attribution in advanced consent mode setups. I hope I answered. I see also Arthur took some time to answer this. Great. I don't see any other questions. So I will start the closing notes. Of course, feel free up until we are off this call to share a question if you have. But yes, this was it. Liz also shared the feedback form in the chat. Please take 2 minutes. It will be very valuable and we will appreciate it a lot if you share some comments, either feedback for the workshop or ideas also, that things that you might want to discuss on another workshop. If you have issues with your setup and we didn't cover them today and you still have questions, feel free to reach out and we can discuss your own case. I don't see any other questions, so I will have to say thank you. It was an honor that you were here today with me. So yes, on Monday in your inbox, everything, all the material will be there. Thank you so much.